Welcome to Resource on the Go, a podcast from the National Sexual Violence Resource Center on understanding, responding to, and preventing sexual abuse and assault. I'm Sally Laskey, NSVRC's evaluation coordinator. On today's episode, Mo Lewis and I chat about what economic support has to do with sexual violence prevention. Hi, Mo.
Hi, Sally. Okay, so we're here to talk about economic supports as a way to prevent sexual violence. And I feel like this is something that people are slower to like maybe grab onto as a way of doing prevention. What do you think about that?
People tend to understand economic supports when it comes to sexual assault survivors. When I worked at a rape crisis center, we did a lot of work to provide support to survivors who needed time off of work or school to attend court dates and medical appointments. We provided emergency or transitional housing. And we put in a lot of effort to make sure survivors didn't have to pay for forensic medical examinations. Additionally, having financial independence is often a critical step for those leaving abusive relationships.
Yeah, when you say all of those things, it makes a lot of sense. And I feel like if you were to talk about this work and tell people like, "Oh yeah, this is what we're doing for survivors," they would go, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense." So, thinking about it from a prevention angle, I know is a little bit different. It seems to me like the link between this idea of increasing economic supports as a way to stop sexual violence before it happens isn't as clear cut. I feel like it requires some ability on our end to see how our settings impact us and how our larger systems shape our settings. We really have to kind of zoom out a bit, I think, both space wise and time wise. Like when we're responding to violence that's already happened, there's like this immediacy to it. Here's a problem. We can help fix it, done. And preventing violence looks really different. It's not that there's that same immediate solution, right? We have to change the larger systems because those are the things that put some people in power over others. They make some people think that other people are not worth respecting. And then we have all these laws and norms that then legitimize that. So I guess if we want to create a world where that type of violence is just unthinkable, it means that we need to radically change those systems. And I think that can be a harder thing to sell and make those connections for. It requires, I feel like, a different kind of conversation and a wider scope of view.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, we're all talking about the economic climate these days with our current experience in the United States. It's
Mhm.
so challenging with prices rising and household budgets being stretched thin. I have several people in my circle that are struggling to find full-time employment. And even those that are employed are struggling to fill up their gas tanks to get to work.
Oh, yeah. I think it's it's so funny to me being on one side of the country from you, and we talk about gas prices and like, what is gas for you now?
Oh, I think yesterday it was 375 at the closest gas station.
Okay. It's just interesting because I'm on the West Coast and our gas has not been under $5 a gallon, I think, since maybe April. And our norm is that it's been over $4 a gallon. And so it's just wild because it depends a lot on where you work and how far do you have to drive to get to work and what kind of car do you have. Like I have a hybrid. It's definitely a pinch to fill it up, but the gas lasts a little bit longer for me. So there's so many things to take into consideration, right?
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that our economy is a human-made system, right? It's
Hmm.
built with inherent biases and made with unfair practices that help to fill the pockets of the 1%. The federal minimum wage has not increased from $7.25 an hour in more than 15 years. And in 2025, the federal minimum wage was below the poverty line and is still the minimum wage in 20 states, according to the Economic Policy Institute. So we don't get lost in the numbers of it all. Can you bring us to what we can do in our prevention work to build economic support?
Yeah, the numbers are so important. And I think in addition to the numbers, we have to think about making changes in the fabric of a community. So that's what building economic support is all about. It's building something that will benefit every person in that community, even if they have no idea that the prevention efforts took place. And we talk about that a lot when we talk about community level prevention. And that's really what economic supports looks like. It's working at that community level. It's impacting the factors that make someone more likely to use violence against others. And we call those risk and protective factors. So at the community level, we want to be looking at those, impacting those, changing those. And that's really where economic support comes into play. And in this field, the work that's happening right now, a lot of people are focusing on things like equal pay, paid parental leave, and affordable childcare, which I know can really make or break your situation when financial things get hard.
Yes. So looking at the current fabric of our communities a little bit more, I want to turn back to some numbers for a minute. New research from the Brookings Institution that was released in May of 2026 describes affordability by comparing the rising cost of essentials against family incomes. And they found that in 2024, 45.5% of US households did not earn enough to cover their necessities. I
Wow.
don't think that this will be surprising to our listeners. Almost half of US households couldn't cover necessities like housing, childcare, healthcare, and food.
Hmm.
And when it comes to think about wages and jobs, we also have to think about the larger systems at play that compound these challenges. This doesn't impact everyone in the same way. This is built from and on top of our history. So, in looking at those complexities, there isn't one fix for this. It's about several different systems. But you mentioned some very specific approaches and some protective factors against sexual abuse, assault, and harassment. When people can't cover the basic necessities, things like paid family leave and subsidized preschool can make a huge difference. Living wage policies can help ensure that people can afford what they need to survive the day. In 2026, the minimum wage in Arizona, Colorado, Hawaii, and my home state of Maine, Missouri, and Nebraska will reach or exceed $15 an hour for the first time ever, meaning that a total of 17 states and Washington, D.C. will reach that threshold. For the first time, there will be more workers living in a state with a $15 an hour or higher wage floor than workers living in states still stuck at that federal minimum of $7.25 an hour. So there are a lot of different mechanisms. We're going to talk about some examples from around the country, but shoring up the ways that we're supporting families. Every policy we set, from tax credit to paid leave, should reduce financial pressures on families and increase the time and capacity for those supportive family relationships that we're hoping to build in our communities. And it's the time to act now. This will help make sure that children and families can keep moving forward even during this difficult moment. What ways are you looking at risk and protective factors specifically, Mo?
When we were talking about supporting survivors, I feel like that is such an easy link for people to make. And when we're talking about economic supports, I mean, I'm convinced, I'm hearing the statistics that you're putting out. I live in this world. I think, yes, of course, this is definitely something that will change the fabric of everybody's lives. And it makes such a big impact. And we've already seen the big impact that these things can make. When it comes to saying, this is what we're going to do for our sexual violence prevention work, I think that link can be harder to explain to people. So when we look at risk and protective factors, the link becomes clearer. And we see, oh, yeah, actually, these risk and protective factors link right up to economic supports. So there's definitely other people who have been doing economic support work for a while, and we can join them in that. It's not something that we necessarily need to lead. So even though it's newer for our field, it doesn't mean that it's new for everybody. And I think that's a great opportunity for us. We can also really look for things that people are fired up about and working on already. So housing rights, employment programs, those who are working for paid family leave and subsidized preschool, income-based programs, those all pair really well with the existing risk and protective factors for sexual violence perpetration. And it gives us a really direct link to why it's important for us to focus on economic supports. That makes sense, right?
It totally does. And we'll put in our show notes links to the fabulous risk and protective factor infographic and online course that you developed that I think when folks can see those connections, we know people have taken that resource to talk to partners, to work with their staff, and to meet with policymakers to help make those connections. So I think we're on the right track. I also really appreciated what you said that we are not the first to look at the issue of economic supports. And for some groups who may be, putting their first steps in place, it might be helpful before we're working to sell the idea to our prevention partners to look at our own organizations and
Hmm.
institutions.
Yeah.
We have a systematic issue of underpayment within the sector of victim services and violence prevention. Victim advocacy and prevention staff deserve fair compensation, and programs need additional resources to pay them what they're worth.
Hmm.
Funding cuts are making this more challenging, but we are agents of change, and we can come together to find ways to improve conditions in our agencies. Talking about this organizational work can help us make connections for people who might not understand. We are a lot more connected than we think. Policies that support thriving communities, including workplaces providing fair compensation, increase safety for all of us. This also opens the door to work with other organizations to expand the conversation to explore sexual harassment policies. In this series that we're doing on economic supports, I was able to interview two local programs in Mississippi that work together to develop a sexual harassment prevention policy toolkit for workplaces that they have offered to share with our listeners. They really dug in deep to providing tools for smaller workplaces and rural communities, which I think is really, really helpful. Are there other shared values that can help us make this connection stronger?
I think there are. And I really like that you're talking about this and the shared values of it all. In our messaging work, we have a lot of focus on shared values. It's such an important way to get people to connect to this work because there are a lot of values that we do share. I think when we're talking about economic supports, a lot of us do truly believe like, should children have a safe, supportive place to grow up? Yeah. I don't know how many people that you will find who say, actually, I don't agree with that. Another value would be people should actually be able to pay their bills with their paycheck. Another value is everyone deserves a safe, stable place to live. People deserve respect and dignity. These are some values that I think probably most, if not all of us, do share. And so finding those shared values with other people in your community is such an important way to root your work in that vision that everyone can get behind it. It's going to change things for everybody in this way that supports those values and makes things better for all of us.
Oh, you're tugging at my heartstrings, Mo. I have lots of young people in my life right now that are currently looking for work. All young people need opportunities and strong supports on the journey into work, but some face a much steeper climb than others. The jobs they get don't always pay enough to support them while they gain experience. Young people need community around them when they start working and as they learn and grow. I'm thinking of the apprenticeship programs that are being offered in my great nephew's school. I'm thinking of living wages that are showing up now in more and more states. Things like offering flexible schedules. And for real, right now, mental health supports are so critical for youth. In doing all those things, their journey will be more successful. When all young people have these kinds of supports, everyone benefits now and in the future. For the employers out there listening, we talked to Shane Spalding at the Urban Institute about employment-focused strategies that can improve outcomes for youth. That will be an upcoming episode in this series. So I hope folks will check out the really exciting and ongoing research that's happening at the Urban Institute.
I love that there's all this research happening. I know that some people are very much based in research and they want to know the numbers and they want to know the statistics and they want to know where we've been and where we're going. So I'm so glad that that's something that we can share with everybody.
Yeah, and I briefly did this shout out to employers that are listening, but I just want to mention that all of these economic support practices, things like having paid transparency, having paid family leave, these things actually benefit employers. So when we're talking about our community, like improving life for our community members, we are including those business owners, those organizational directors as well. I was thinking about the paid family leave policies that were put in place in Tennessee. And this was currently for paid family leave for state employees was enacted. And 1 year after enacting that paid parental leave policy for those state employees, there was a 22% reduction in turnover. There was a 25% decrease in retirements. And there was a 56% increase in applicants for those state government jobs. So I think there are a lot of things that we can share in our messaging and connections with employers about how these pretty simple policies can be put in place.
Those are huge number shifts. That's
Aren't
really
they?
amazing.
So I know we'll have a lot more coming up in the podcast series, and there will also be some updates on our website about preventing sexual violence in the workplace that will connect to some of these economic support issues. We also want to encourage folks to check out our housing podcast series as well. And Mo, should we invite folks to, submit topics?
Yes. So if there are things that resonated with you when we talked about economic supports that you want to share with us, that you would like to hear featured on another podcast episode, or if there's a resource you've created that you'd like us to see and share out with the field, email us at prevention@nsvrc-respecttogether.org. We'd love to hear from you.
We would. And this is really just to open up the conversation, right, Mo? There is so much more that can be talked about related to economic supports, but we hope to get the conversation started. So thank you so much for kind of talking through and thinking through this with me today. I really appreciate the opportunity for us just to get a little bit stronger with how we're making those connections.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great talking with you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Resource on the Go. For more resources and information about preventing sexual assault, visit our website at www.nsvrc.org. Contact us by emailing resources at nsvrc-respecttogether.org.